I used to think I had it all figured out. Life, love, business, the whole deal. My name's Jason Miller. I'm 38, born and raised in Colorado, and I own a small but successful contracting company in Denver. Nothing flashy, just honest work with calloused hands and blueprints stained by coffee and sawdust. If you needed a kitchen gutted, a deck rebuilt, or your entire house flipped before summer, I was your guy. I started the business at 26 with a beat-up F-150, a rusty toolbox, and a hell of a drive to prove myself. Spent the first few years working 80-hour weeks and sleeping in my truck when the job site ran late and the motel was too far. Slowly, I built a name. By the time I turned 30, I had 2 full crews working under me and enough income to finally exhale. That's around the time Danielle came back into my life. We'd met years earlier through mutual friends, but nothing ever came of it back then. I was still busy climbing the ladder, and she was just getting her real estate license. Fast forward to a July barbecue, one of those casual backyard deals with plastic chairs and grilled hot dogs that taste better with mustard and laughter, and there she was. Danielle had this presence, you know? Auburn hair tied back in a messy ponytail, confident posture, wearing a simple blue sundress that somehow looked like $1,000,000. She had this laugh that pulled people toward her like gravity. Not loud, not fake. Just easy and alive. We hit it off that night like old friends who'd been waiting for the right moment. By the end of the month, we were seeing each other regularly. She was sharp, really sharp. She knew how to talk to people, read them, charm them, and close a deal without ever seeming pushy. She could walk into a room full of strangers and have half of them smiling in 5 minutes. And I'll admit it, I liked being the guy on her arm. We dated for 2 years before getting married in a small ceremony up in Estes Park. No giant wedding, no showboating. Just a handful of people we trusted, a lake behind us, and the wind carrying our vows into the trees. It was one of those crisp autumn days where the air feels clean and everything smells like pine needles and possibility. I remember thinking, this is it. This is the kind of peace men work their whole lives to find. We didn't want kids. Not because we didn't like them. I've got nieces and nephews I adore, but because we liked our life the way it was. We wanted freedom. Mornings with pancakes and black coffee on the porch. Weekend getaways with no diaper bags or babysitters to call. Nights where we could come home late, kick off our boots, and collapse on the couch without stepping on toys. Our home sat on the edge of Denver, away from the main grid, with just enough land to feel like we'd escaped without being too far from a Home Depot run. It had a wraparound porch I built myself, complete with rocking chairs and wind chimes she picked out at a roadside market in Taos. She had a knack for decorating neutral tones, lots of plants, always smelled like lavender, and whatever candle was on sale at World Market. The kind of place where you walk in and everything just feels right. Our routines were solid. She handled open houses and client calls. I handled lumber orders and framing inspections. We'd meet at home around 6. She'd pop a bottle of wine. I'd crack open a beer. She'd tell me about the picky buyers who wanted a farmhouse sink in a condo, and I'd complain about inspectors with clipboards and god complexes. Then we'd make dinner, something simple: pan-seared chicken, spaghetti, tacos on Tuesdays. We ate at the kitchen island, not the table, and that felt good. Familiar. Like we weren't putting on a show for anyone. She'd light candles while we watched old crime shows or documentaries about plane crashes and cults. We'd end up on the couch together under that faded wool blanket her aunt gave us the first Christmas. She always ran cold, even in summer. I can't count how many times I tossed her that blanket without her asking. It became a habit, a rhythm, one of those quiet love languages no one ever teaches you. To the outside world, we looked perfect. And inside, I thought we were too. I wasn't blind to the little arguments. Everyone has those. Sometimes she'd roll her eyes when I forgot to take my boots off. I'd get quiet when she double-booked our weekends without asking. But we always bounced back. Apologies came easy between us. Quick to forgive. Quicker to laugh again. Looking back now, maybe that's what kept me from seeing it sooner. I was comfortable. Content. Maybe even a little too proud of the life we built together. I figured we were on the same page. Same dreams, same goals. I trusted her like I trusted the studs I nailed into every wall of this house: steady, true, and built to last. But if I've learned anything, it's that sometimes the cracks are already there. You just don't see them until the light hits at the right angle. And when it did, man, everything changed. It started small, like a loose nail you don't notice until the floorboard creaks under your step. At first, I just figured Danielle was tired. Real estate can be a grind. Clients pulling you in 5 directions, weekend showings, back-to-back phone calls. I never doubted the hustle. That's one thing I'd always respected about her. She could outwork half the people I knew. But then, something shifted. I remember one Friday night in early spring. We were supposed to have dinner with my friend Terry and his wife, just burgers and beers at their place. Danielle called me an hour before and said she was wiped out. Said she had 3 last-minute showings and didn't have the energy to socialize. Fair enough, I thought. I told her I'd swing by solo, pick up a 6-pack on the way. When I got back home around 9, the house was quiet. Lights low, no dinner dishes, no wine glass on the counter. Just her in bed, makeup washed off, pretending to be asleep. I kissed her forehead and told myself she was just stressed. One of those long weeks. We all have them. But things like that kept piling up. The biggest change was her phone. Danielle had never been secretive. If her phone buzzed on the counter, she'd glance at it, maybe laugh, maybe text back, and move on. But suddenly, that thing was glued to her hand like it was part of her body. Always face down. Always on silent. Once, I picked it up by reflex when it buzzed during dinner. I wasn't even trying to snoop, just thought it might be urgent. She snatched it out of my hand before I could even read the screen and gave me a look like I'd reached into her purse without asking. She mumbled something about work confidentiality. I let it go. But it kept happening. She'd leave the room to take calls. Stay in the car longer than necessary after pulling into the driveway. She started going out on Sundays for open houses that didn't show up on her calendar. I checked once out of curiosity, searched the MLS listings she managed, and the house she claimed to be showing didn't even exist. Said it was a pocket listing. I nodded like I understood. I didn't. That same weekend, she came home wearing a new dress I hadn't seen before. Tight, bright-colored, low in the back. Not exactly what you wear to show off a 2-bedroom ranch to retirees. And I noticed she'd gotten a new shade of lipstick. Coral or something. I'm no expert, but it stood out. Danielle never changed her look without making a production out of it. Normally, she'd hold up 2 dresses and ask me to choose, or make me guess what was different about her makeup. Not this time. I asked if she'd been shopping. She just shrugged and said, I needed a mood boost. Then she brushed past me like I was a stranger in a hallway. I started paying attention. The small details turned into patterns. Her perfume changed, less floral, more musky. Subtle, but I've always had a nose for that sort of thing. She kept a different bottle in her car than the one in our bathroom. She also began wearing heels more often, even to casual meetings. The same woman who used to swear by her flats was suddenly walking around like she was going to a gala. Still, I kept my mouth shut. I'm not the jealous type. Never been. I've got a business to run and a house to maintain. I didn't want to turn into that guy who interrogates his wife over every phone call. But I also wasn't born yesterday. And the worst feeling in the world is when your gut knows something your heart's not ready to admit. One night, I got home late from a job site about an hour outside the city. I walked in and saw her sitting on the couch, hair still styled, fresh coat of lipstick, sipping wine like she was waiting on someone. She flinched when she saw me. Oh, I didn't know you'd be home this early, she said, setting down her glass. I looked at the clock. It's almost 10. Yeah, just lost track of time, she muttered, grabbing her phone and heading upstairs without another word. That night, she didn't ask about my day. Didn't ask if I ate. I sat there in silence, watching the ice melt in her wine glass, feeling like a ghost in my own home. That was the moment I knew something was off for real. So, I called up Jake. Jake and I go way back. We played football in high school and kept in touch ever since. He's one of those guys who turned his computer hobby into a 6-figure job in cybersecurity. Wears hoodies in the summer and drinks more coffee than a detective in a 90s movie. Doesn't ask many questions unless he's getting paid. I asked him for a favor. Quiet one. Told him I needed to see what was going on with Danielle's phone, texts, photos, GPS logs, the works. He raised his eyebrows but didn't say a word. Just nodded and asked for the model. I handed him a duplicate of her work phone that she'd left behind during a shower one night. He worked some kind of software magic that was way over my head, and 2 days later, I had access to everything she did on her phone in real time. Messages, call logs, calendar events, locations. He set it up so I could view it all from my tablet like I was watching the news. I didn't want to do it, but I also didn't want to be the last one in the room to know the truth. Because deep down, I already did. I still remember the first message that showed up on the mirrored feed. It was 6:12 p.m. on a Wednesday. I was sitting in my truck after a long day laying tile in a client's kitchen, sweaty, sore, and craving a beer. I pulled out the tablet Jake set up and saw her name light up the screen. Incoming message from Mitch, architect. At first, I squinted. Architect? Danielle never mentioned a Mitch. And I know the circle she runs in. You spend long enough around real estate, you meet most of the folks who design and build the places. I've even worked side by side with a few on remodels. But Mitch? Never heard of him. Then I read the message. Can't wait to see you again, babe. Last weekend was unreal. Same time Sunday. My stomach dropped like a wrench off a ladder. Babe? I stared at it for a solid minute. My heart wasn't racing. My fists weren't clenched. I didn't throw anything. That surprised me. I always figured if I ever caught someone talking to my wife like that, I'd fly off the handle. But I didn't. I just sat there, still and quiet, like I was standing in a frozen lake. I scrolled back. There were messages going back weeks. Some flirty, some casual. A few that made my jaw tighten. She'd been careful, no photos, no names and specifics, but the tone was there. Inside jokes. References to our spot. Lots of wish you were here, and thinking of you. And he wasn't an architect. A few taps later, and I had his full name. Jacob Mitchell Foster. Instagram profile wide open. Tagged in videos at some gym downtown, flexing and shouting through protein powder sales pitches. He had one of those faces, chiseled jaw, trimmed beard, fake deep eyes that probably worked on bored housewives trying to find meaning between Pilates and brunch. The kind of guy who wears stringer tanks and quotes motivational nonsense about grind and legacy. He was no architect. He was a trainer. And Danielle had been pretending she was scouting condos while meeting him. I kept scrolling, taking screenshots of every message, timestamp, and photo. Some were innocent if you looked at them out of context. Loved seeing you today. Or, you looked amazing. But I had the context. I had the timeline. I knew exactly where she was when she sent them. And I didn't say a word. Not yet. See, there's something about building houses from the ground up that teaches you patience. You don't pour concrete on soft soil. You prep it. You make sure the foundation can hold weight before you start stacking bricks. That's how I approached this. Brick by brick. I wasn't about to confront her with half the story and let her twist it into something it wasn't. So I watched. Waited. Kept living like nothing had changed. She'd come home with that same bright smile. Ask about my day. Tell me about the tough client who didn't like the wallpaper in a mid-century listing. I'd nod along, play the part. All the while, her phone would buzz in her bag, and I'd get the same message on my tablet across the room. Thinking of you. Miss your hands. Love the way you smell today. You bring out the wild in me. She started working out more too. Said she wanted to tone up for summer. New leggings, a monthly gym pass she never used before. She'd come home flushed, hair in a high ponytail, water bottle still cold. I'd ask how her workout went, and she'd say, just treadmill and core stuff. I knew better. I knew exactly what she was doing. What time she arrived. What time she left. I had GPS logs from Jake's app to the minute. I even knew what playlist she used while driving there. The kicker? One Saturday, she told me she had to show a duplex in Lakewood at 2 p.m. I watched her pull out of the driveway wearing a tight black dress and heels, again, not exactly your open house uniform. I waited 10 minutes and followed at a distance in my truck, keeping well behind, like I'd done jobs for private investigators before. She didn't head west toward Lakewood. She headed downtown, parked in front of a gym, walked in without hesitation. He met her at the door. I didn't get out of the truck, didn't make a scene, just sat there and watched them disappear inside, laughing like they were in some corny commercial for energy drinks and bad decisions. That night, she came home with a smile and kissed me on the cheek. Said the duplex had bad plumbing and rude tenants. Then she made tacos. Said she missed cooking for me. I chewed slowly, eyes steady, nodding like I believed every word. I was building the rest of the foundation, waiting for the structure to be complete. I cataloged every moment. Screenshots, logs, dates. I even took photos of the clothes she wore on showing days and matched them to her messages. I knew what was coming. She didn't. She had no idea I already had the blueprints. And I was almost done measuring the frame. The first step was isolating what was mine. Not out of spite, just preparation. You don't leave the doors open when you know a storm's rolling in. I started with the financials. My business, Jason Miller Contracting, had always been separate on paper, but I went in and double-checked everything. Cleaned up account access, reset passwords, and moved my savings into a different bank entirely. Opened it under my LLC and used a P.O. box as the mailing address. That way, Nothing was tied to our house. I removed her as emergency contact on my business insurance. Same with my health plan. Took my name off her car insurance too. We had a couple of shared accounts, basic stuff for groceries, gas, and trips. I froze all of them one afternoon after she left for one of her open house Sundays. Took 15 minutes on the banking app. Left just enough in the joint checking for optics in case she checked it and got suspicious. I even ordered a new debit card for myself and had it sent to the office. Then came the house. Our place wasn't just a roof and drywall, it was my pride. I designed most of it myself and done about 60% of the labor over 3 years. I knew every inch, every outlet, every beam that hid behind the drywall. So I put that knowledge to work. First, I installed cameras. A set of motion-triggered, cloud-connected ones. The good kind, not that store-bought junk. One above the front door, one in the kitchen, disguised in a smoke detector, another in the garage, and one in the hallway leading to our bedroom. Didn't bother with the bathrooms, wasn't interested in anything private like that. I wasn't trying to spy. I was collecting proof, making sure if something went down, I had receipts. I also installed sensors, door and window triggers. They were small and discreet, tied into my phone. If a door opened when it shouldn't have, I'd know within 5 seconds. I even bought one of those hidden safes, the kind that looks like an outlet cover but flips open to reveal a steel box. Bolted it inside the coat closet, behind the winter jackets. In it, I placed a USB drive with every message I'd saved, a copy of our marriage license, and a thumb-sized audio recorder that held a few of her phone conversations she'd carelessly made on speaker in the living room when she thought I wasn't listening. I also kept my passport in there, just in case. By now, you might be thinking this was overkill, that maybe I should have just confronted her. Maybe you're right. But when you've worked 20 years to build something, your life, your name, your house, you don't burn it down because you saw smoke. You wait. You check the wiring. You build a fire break. Once the systems were in place, I focused on what came next. I told her I'd booked a weekend trip. Said one of my clients up near Telluride wanted me to scope out a custom patio and fire pit. Maybe walk the site before winter set in. That part was true. I did have a client up there. What I left out was that I wasn't going anywhere. I told Danielle I'd be gone Friday morning through Monday night. Left a duffel bag by the door, packed with old boots and a couple of flannels I didn't care about. I even threw a travel coffee mug in the truck and made sure she saw it when she kissed me goodbye that Friday morning. Be safe, she said, not meeting my eyes. You too, I said, and I meant it in a way she didn't catch. As soon as she drove off, I circled the block, parked around back, and slipped into my detached office at the edge of the property. It used to be my workshop before I finished the basement. Now it was part tool storage, part man cave, comfortable enough to stay in for a few days. Had a cot, a little space heater, and a coffee maker. There was even a mini fridge full of leftovers and Coors Light. That's where I stayed. I didn't text her. Didn't call. Just let the weekend unfold like a trap door waiting to spring. From that office, I could access the cameras, monitor the motion sensors, and see her phone messages in real time. I had everything I needed, eyes on the house, ears on the inside, and a quiet place to wait while the walls closed in. Some folks think revenge is loud. Screaming matches, thrown dishes, door slams and tires squealing down the road. But I believe in silence. Letting someone walk right into their own mess, thinking they're in the clear. Then, when the dust settles, all that's left is the truth and the sound of a door locking behind them. I've been holed up in that office since Friday. Ate cold sandwiches, drank beer warm enough to make me regret forgetting ice, and slept in tower shifts on a cot older than my marriage. I kept the lights low and the blinds shut. I didn't even start the truck once, just in case the sound carried back to the main house. If she'd gotten the slightest whiff that I hadn't actually gone to Telluride, the whole plan would have crumbled. Sunday started like any other lazy weekend in our neighborhood. Lawnmowers fired up around 8. Birds chirped at the window like they were auditioning for a Disney flick. I was on my second cup of coffee, watching the kitchen camera feed when Danielle came downstairs. She was in one of her nicer outfits, those high-waisted jeans and a white blouse that had no business being worn on a day off. Hair done. Lipstick on. She wasn't heading to an open house, I'll tell you that much. She paced the living room, checking her phone. I watched her type, then pace again. Then she peeked out the front window and smiled. That smile told me everything. 3 minutes later, the garage cam caught him. Mitch, wearing a gym hoodie and joggers, holding an energy drink like he thought he was still in high school. He didn't knock. He didn't hesitate. He just walked right in through the side entrance like he lived there. She met him at the door, and they hugged. I watched them laugh, arms wrapped around each other like this was some Hallmark movie, and I didn't exist. They didn't waste time. Mitch toed off his shoes at the door and followed her upstairs like a dog who knew where the treats were kept. I shifted the feed to the upstairs hallway cam. No audio, just movement. She leaned in to whisper something, and he grabbed her hand. They disappeared into the bedroom, the one I built with my own hands. Real wood beams. Custom crown molding. A bed frame I carved myself one winter when work was slow. I waited 5 minutes, maybe 6. Gave them just enough rope to hang themselves. Then I stood up, grabbed my phone, and walked out the back door. The grass crunched under my boots. I moved slow, not because I was nervous, because I wanted to remember every detail. The way the morning sun hit the siding. The smell of the neighbor's bacon wafting through the air. The fact that my own front door still had the wreath Danielle picked out last Christmas. I unlocked it and stepped inside. Silence. I walked up the stairs, careful not to make a sound. The bedroom door was half closed. I pushed it open like I owned the place, because I did. And there they were. He was halfway under the comforter, jeans in a pile by the dresser, his hoodie tossed over the chair I used to drape my work jacket on every night. Danielle was at the foot of the bed, startled mid-motion, eyes wide like a deer in headlights. Mitch froze, tried to jump up, lost his footing and tumbled off the bed, crashing onto the rug with a dull thud. He scrambled to grab his jeans, one leg in, one leg out, trying to pull them up while covering himself with the other hand like that would somehow fix what I'd already seen. I just stood there, didn't raise my voice, didn't throw a punch, just looked at them both and let the weight of the silence hang in the room like a thundercloud. Danielle tried to speak. Jason, I held up a hand and cut her off. Then I pulled out my phone. Click. Mitch blinked as the camera flash hit his face. Hope you're photogenic, I said, cool as ice. This one's for the album. He looked around like a man realizing the fire drill wasn't a drill. Listen, man. I turned to him, slowly. Don't call me man. You're in my house. You're in my bed. And you've got the nerve to try and explain yourself? He shut up. Danielle looked like she'd just been hit with a bucket of ice water. Her lipstick was smudged. Her blouse was halfway unbuttoned. She wrapped the blanket around herself like it made a difference. Jason, please, let me explain. You can explain to a judge, I said. But right now, I want both of you out of my house. Mitch looked at Danielle like she was going to say something that would save them both. She didn't. I stepped aside and pointed at the hallway. You've got 60 seconds. I've seen a lot of chaos in my life. Job site accidents. Clients trying to change blueprints halfway through a build. Weather ruining weeks of work overnight. But nothing, and I mean nothing, compared to the sheer absurdity of that Sunday morning. I didn't lose my temper. I didn't raise my voice. I stood there, steady, as Mitch stumbled around the room trying to dress himself with all the grace of a rodeo calf on roller skates. Danielle stood near the foot of the bed, still wrapped in the blanket like it was some kind of armor. After I took that picture and told them both to leave, Mitch had the gall to try and talk. Look, man, I didn't know she was married. I tilted my head. You walked past family pictures. There's a wedding photo on the dresser. My boots are by the door. You didn't know. He hesitated, then shrugged. I mean, yeah, but I didn't think. I'll make this real simple for you, I said, calm as a winter pond. You've got 30 seconds to get your things and get out, or you're going to find out what the inside of my garage looks like from the floor, zip-tied and duct-taped. He froze. I didn't blink. He grabbed his gym bag, socks, keys, dropped the keys, picked them up, almost fell again, and bolted out the door without another word. I followed behind, watching him cross the lawn like he thought I might come after him. I didn't. I just stood there until I saw him get in his car and peel off down the street. Then I turned back inside. Danielle was still in the living room, holding that blanket like it was stitched from regrets. You violated my privacy, she snapped, voice shrill. You can't just spy on me like some lunatic. I raised an eyebrow. Your privacy? In my house? You brought a man into the bed I built, Danielle. You paraded him through my kitchen, past our wedding photos, into a home that I paid for, and now you're talking about privacy? I didn't think you'd find out, she muttered. Well, I said, walking past her to the kitchen, I did. I poured myself a glass of water. My hands were steady. I looked at her, calm and focused. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. That was all I said before I walked out the back door and into the fresh air. By sunset, she was locked out. Every code in the house had been changed. Door locks, garage access, the security system, all reset. Her name had been removed from the shared utilities. Her key fob for the garage? Deactivated. I even turned off the Wi-Fi temporarily to force a disconnect on her phone from the home network. I didn't want her syncing or snooping or trying anything clever. She tried, though. Oh, she tried. At 4:42 p.m., I got an alert from the bank. Attempted transfer from our joint checking into her personal savings, denied. I'd already frozen the account. At 5:09, she tried logging into one of my business accounts. Password reset attempt blocked. Then came the real kicker. At 6:18, I watched through the driveway cam as she climbed into the black Benz and tried to start it. Nothing happened. Engine wouldn't turn over. She tried again. And again. I sat on the couch watching her on my phone, sipping from a beer and feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time, relief. I had installed a kill switch weeks ago. The car was synced to my phone through a fleet tracking app I'd used for my work trucks. I could disable the ignition and locate it within 3 feet. I tapped the screen and watched the vehicle location ping, right there in the driveway. She got out and kicked the tire. Then she called someone. Probably her sister. I didn't care. She paced back and forth, waving her arms, looking up at the sky like maybe it was the universe's fault. I didn't go outside. I didn't open the door. I just let her stew. By 7 o'clock, her ride arrived, an old silver Camry I recognized as her sister's. She got in without saying a word, and they drove off. She was out, and I was finally alone. The house was quiet. I could hear the fridge humming again. The clock in the hallway ticked like it had a purpose. I walked back upstairs and stood in the doorway of the bedroom for a long minute. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. I gathered her things into a pile, neatly. I didn't throw anything or tear anything. I'm not a dramatic man. Folded her clothes into boxes, set her makeup bag on top, placed her shoes by the door. Even included her favorite candle, the lavender one she always lit after a long day. I'm not heartless. Just done. Before bed, I sat out on the porch with my boots up on the railing and watched the wind rustle through the pine trees out back. The world didn't feel heavier. It felt lighter, like something rotten had finally been cut loose. She picked her path. I just built the fence to keep it off mine. I figured Mitch thought he got off easy, walking out that day with his gym bag and ego barely bruised. But he didn't know me. He didn't know I was the kind of man who finishes what he starts. It took less than 10 minutes to figure out where he worked. I already had his full name from his social media, Jacob Mitchell Foster, and a few simple searches led me to Flex Point Performance, some upscale gym in the heart of Denver. The kind of place with smoothie bars and staff and branded dry fit gear. His profile was right there on the staff page. Strength and conditioning coach, lifestyle optimization specialist. I nearly laughed at the screen. I gave it a few days, just enough time for him to settle back into his routine, thinking the storm had passed. Then I paid him a visit. It was a Thursday, just after 5. Prime time. The gym was packed with after-work traffic, lawyers, tech guys, stay-at-home wives who needed someone to clap when they finished their set. I walked in wearing jeans and boots, stuck out like a sore thumb in that world of neon tights and protein shakers. I didn't care. The front desk girl greeted me. "Can I help you find someone?" "Yeah," I said. "Looking for Mitch." "Oh, he's with a client right now." "Don't worry. I'll wait." I sat on a bench near the smoothie bar, arms crossed, watching him like a hawk circling the field. He was over by the squat racks, counting reps for a woman who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. I waited until he finished and sent her to the water station. Then I walked over. He didn't recognize me at first. Probably didn't expect to see the guy whose life he'd trampled walking straight toward him in broad daylight. When he finally did, his smile dropped. "Hey, Jason, right?" I nodded once. "Let's talk." Before he could answer, I waved over the gym manager. His name was Brett, clean-cut guy with clipboard energy and the kind of handshake that tries too hard. "Brett," I said, "I wanted to bring something to your attention about one of your trainers." He blinked. "All right, what's going on?" I pulled out my phone. "Mitch here's been soliciting married women. Clients or not. He's been using your facility as his personal hunting ground." I tapped play. Up came a short clip. Mitch and Danielle in my kitchen, arms around each other, timestamp clear in the corner. Nothing overly explicit, just enough to send the message. Brett turned pale. That's your wife?" "Ex-wife now," I said. "Thought you might want to know before he starts chatting up someone else's spouse during kettlebell class." Mitch stepped forward, hands up. "Come on, man. This is between us. No, I said. It's between you, her, and every married woman who walks into this place. Brett didn't argue. He looked at Mitch, shook his head, and told him to head to the office. I think we're done here, I said and turned to leave. I didn't raise my voice, didn't cause a scene, just dropped the truth in the middle of the room and let gravity do the rest. Later that night, I got a message on Facebook from someone named Alyssa. Her profile picture was her and Mitch at some vineyard, arms around each other, smiling like they didn't have a care in the world. Turns out, Mitch had a fiancée. She messaged me a simple sentence. Thank you for telling me. I had no idea. That was it. I didn't need to respond. Danielle, meanwhile, had been staying at her sister's townhouse on the other side of town. I knew that because she tried to reach me about 5 times over the next 2 weeks. Calls, voicemails, a couple emails, all ignored. Her first voicemail was full of anger. How dare you lock me out, Jason? That's still my home too. The second was more desperation. Can we please talk? Just 5 minutes. I made a mistake. I miss you. The third was just silence. Breathing. Then a soft please. I didn't answer any of them. She dropped off the radar after that, probably thinking time would heal the damage. It didn't. Not for her. I heard through the grapevine that she'd been fired from her agency. Something about ethics concerns after a client filed a complaint. I wasn't involved, but I wasn't surprised. Meanwhile, I kept on living. Work was steady. House was quiet. I'd come home to real peace. Not the kind you fake through gritted teeth and small talk over dinner. No more pretending. No more gut checks wondering if my wife was where she said she'd be. Revenge doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes the best kind is just turning the volume down on their life until they're left with nothing but the echo of what they ruined. Divorce, when handled right, is a lot like demolition. You don't just start swinging hammers. You plan the angles, you know where the pressure points are, and when the time's right, you bring it down clean. That's how I handled ours. I had everything I needed. Dates, screenshots, GPS logs, even the footage from the house. My lawyer, Carl Jenkins, the kind of guy who wears the same brown suit every day and never forgets a single detail, looked at the evidence I gave him and just said, "This won't take long." He was right. Danielle got served while she was still staying at her sister's. I didn't do it to be cruel. I just didn't want her walking back into the house pretending like it wasn't over. When she got the papers, she tried calling me again, twice. The second voicemail was all tears and nostalgia, full of lines like, "We can fix this," and "You're the only man who ever really knew me." Too late. Carl filed under irreconcilable differences, with an attachment that hinted at misconduct. We didn't push the adultery angle in court. We didn't need to. She knew I had it all. One look at the folder my attorney slid across the mediation table, and she stopped making eye contact. She tried to get the house, claimed she'd contributed emotionally to the design. Carl just raised one eyebrow and slid out a photo of me laying foundation with a caption date 6 months before I even met her. She moved on to the car. That was already in my name. She mentioned the dog, Boone, our Shepherd Lab mix, but I cut her off and said flatly, "He doesn't even go near you anymore." She didn't argue after that. In the end, she walked away with a few pieces of furniture, her clothes, and a settlement small enough to feel like spare change. She kept trying to get more. Claimed she was accustomed to a certain lifestyle, like the judge would hand her a check for cheating and calling it a lifestyle. Didn't work. The judge signed off within 2 months. Quickest case Carl had in years, he said. Surgical, clean, no appeals, no drama. Just a clean break. The fallout came after. Danielle tried to do damage control the only way she knew how: social media. Posted some dramatic update about losing everything in a whirlwind and being blindsided by the ones we trust. Added some vague quote about healing and growth and tossed in a filter that made her eyes look like she hadn't cried in a week straight. But here's the thing: people talk. Her coworkers knew what went down. So did her friends. One of them, Kelly, even liked one of my posts a few days later. Not subtle. The comments on her post were polite at first. "Stay strong, you deserve happiness," that kind of thing. But they got quiet real fast. Nobody showed up to back her up when the story started leaking out in whispers. Turns out, trust is hard to get back once folks realize you're the one who torched the bridge. As for Mitch, vanished. A friend of a friend told me he left Denver a few weeks after getting canned from the gym. Word was he got into it with his landlord over back rent. I didn't dig too hard. But a couple months later, I got a weird little update from a former client who'd seen him working at a gas station outside Tucson, Arizona. Different haircut. Same fake grin. I didn't care enough to confirm it. Just nodded and went back to my coffee. The best part, though? The silence. After months of tension, lying, second-guessing, and all that pressure in my chest, it was finally gone. I come home to an empty house, quiet and clean, and feel something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. I'd take Boone for walks without checking the time. I'd fix things around the house without feeling like I had to rush through it just to get to a dinner filled with small talk and forced smiles. I even started dating again. Carefully. I wasn't looking for fireworks, I just wanted honesty. Ended up reconnecting with a woman I used to know through work. Her name's Claire. Teaches high school math. Smart, grounded, no games. She doesn't lie about where she is, and she doesn't need constant validation from strangers on a phone. She brings over coffee on Saturdays and actually listens when I talk about work. It's simple, easy, real. Last Christmas, my phone buzzed at 2:14 a.m. Unknown number. Voicemail. I didn't recognize the voice at first. She sounded hoarse, half whispering. Then I caught her name at the end. Jason. I missed the real man you were. The one who looked at me like I mattered. I was stupid. I lost the only good thing I had. I know it's too late. I just had to say it. I didn't respond. Didn't delete it either. Not out of sentiment. More like a reminder. Of what I survived. Of what I rebuilt. Because at the end of it all, she lost the life I gave her. And I finally got mine back. Share your thoughts in the comments. Do you think catching someone red-handed is more satisfying than just walking away quietly? If you liked the story, subscribe to the channel and give us a like.